Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ray. I'm a detransition male, and today I'm going to be reacting to Destiny talking about what is a woman because Destiny does not know what a woman is, and he's philosophically confused, and his big intellect is preventing him from a common sense, rational, principled analysis, and he's too caught up in this linguistic mumbo jumbo, and he just sort of he just doesn't give a clear answer, and he defends his inability to give a clear answer as being somehow more linguistically or intellectually principled, such that he's defending this idea that it's like this super complicated question, what is a woman, and it involves super complicated things, and like I'm going to deconstruct this and show that it's actually quite simple. We don't need to get all concerned about it. So, okay, let's watch the video.
I'm just going to end up re-explaining what I explained on the Hodge Twin show. When you're using words, the goal is to invoke something in a person's mind. Okay, that's all we do when we speak language. The goal is to invoke something in a person's mind. I would say that in like 99% of circumstances, when you say woman, you say man, people understand what you're invoking there, right? But you take for granted how complicated language is when you speak a thing to invoke something in a person's mind, because what you're invoking in a person's mind is very rarely as rigid or as fundamental as people like to think. That's why it's funny to me when people say things like, oh, well, when I say woman, I mean like vagina and tits or whatever. And I was like, okay, that maybe you can say that you mean that. But when you identify people as man or woman in society, when we say that, we're not really evaluating them on those circumstances. You might assume that they have it, but we're using these as like proxies for other traits or characteristics. Or like when somebody says, for instance, even in common policy for like sayings, somebody says like, "Oh, you throw like a woman," or "Why are you acting like a girl?" Are they literally saying that like you're moving your body in a way that makes it seem like you have a vagina or tits, or are they referring to some like other types of like behavioral characteristics? Right? They're saying when we say words, it's complicated. The question of what is a woman is just a retard's way of trying to get a gotcha because they're either too intellectually lazy to explore, like trans topics, or they're genuinely too retarded to understand how sophisticated or complicated language is. That's it. Like, what is a woman is just a shortcut to being able to say like, oh, well, I don't think that like trans people are a real phenomenon, which by the way,
That's so stupid. Like, you can say that transness is a real phenomenon and still say that trans women are not women, that trans women are a subcategory of men. There's nothing about the transgender phenomenon that you're unable to describe phenomenologically or descriptively or empirically. Um, you know, when you say that trans women are a subtype of men, in virtue of the fact that men are adult human males and women are adult human females, that does not like disallow you from understanding transgenderism, because what is a trans woman? A trans woman is a male, a man who wants to be a woman. That's what it is. So like but you don't have to say that just because you want to be something, you are that thing. So I don't know why he thinks that's retarded or lazy, or somehow like failing to understand the sophistication of language or whatever. Because in other categories of reality, we acknowledge that just because you desire to be something, that doesn't mean you are that thing. If a white person desires to be a black person, that doesn't mean that they're black. And even if Rachel Dolezal, passes as black or whatever, she was the white woman who, identified as black or whatever, and trans race. So, are we going to say the same thing that, oh, like the language of being black is so complicated, and if you sort of like, appear in these sophisticated ways, but no, that's not what the word means. Like, that's just not what black means. Black refers to an objective biological fact in regards to like your heritage or whatever, like your geographical history as like a people evolving distinctly from other geographically isolated people. That's what it means. So when we say that what is a woman, we're talking similarly about an objective biological social category that refers to the sexual dimorphism between males and females, which is an objective, mind independent biological fact.
That's like a defensible position. If you think that trans people aren't real, or if you think that like the way that we approach trans issues is not real, or I'm sorry, is not good, then have that argument. You can have that discussion, right? Which is fine. But to try to mask it with like a what is a woman, it's like content made by retards for retards.
The purpose of the question, what is a woman, as a gotcha, is to illustrate in a very clear and simple way the fact that gender identity activists do not have a coherent, logical, principle, reality based understanding of their own ideological movement. It's basically a way to pinpoint a deep philosophical incoherence at the heart of the gender identity movement. And the gender identity movement says that if you identify as a woman, you are a woman. And asking what is a woman, what is it, the thing that you're identifying as, when you cannot define it in non-circular terms, that is a clear indication that there is philosophical confusion going on. So yes, it is a gotcha, but the gotcha is effective because it effectively catches these trans activists in a trap. And the reason why it is a trap is because the trans ideological position is actually fundamentally incoherent. That is the point of the gotcha. So the gotcha is effective because it actually gets them, because they can't answer the question. So that is why it is effective. So no, it's not a retard thing. It's not lazy or whatever. It is a effective tactic at quickly identifying the fundamental philosophical flaw in the logic of transgender activism.
Retards to convince retards that they're not retards. Like that's like you think you're getting some like massive own by saying like, well, what is a woman? Like, it's what, like any word, any singular word is truly going to be pretty difficult to define when you're talking about the difference between like universal categories of things versus like particular things themselves. Just definitionally, these are incredibly difficult things to pin down. And that can be true if we talk about like, what is a phone? What's the difference between like a phone and a tablet? Or like, I said before, what is a table? What is a chair? What is like any particular type of thing? And I think I give the meme example, like, well, what is a hot dog or a sandwich, right? Like these are like meme examples. But
so notice how these people like Destiny who make this sort of argument, this like, well, you can't define a chair, you can't define a table. This is all fuzzy. This is all loose. This is like, this like loosely defined family resemblance of like, loosely associated like semantic, associations, whatever. And you can't pin it down. It's like fuzzy. Like you can't define a chair. They always are in reference to human concepts or like concepts that are unique to human civilization, that are artificial. Phone, artificial. Table, artificial. Chair, artificial. But when we're talking about man and woman, we're talking about a biological category. So take the concept of bull versus cow. Are we confused about what a bull is? Can we not define that clearly? Like, and yes, like when we're talking about species, there is this sort of like philosophical fuzziness in regards to what's called a ring species. But I don't think that invalidates the basic idea that when we say bull, what is a bull? We have a very clear idea of what that means. It is the male version of the cow. And the cow is the female version of the cow. And there's not ambiguity about this. We can define that very clearly and in a non-circular way. And that distinction between bulls and cows was developed organically because it is just basic common sense and basic empirical observation of reality and basic usefulness to humans to recognize the fundamental objective biological reality of sexual dimorphism between males and females, and to develop linguistic categories that recognize that fundamental sexual dimorphism between males and females, to recognize the sex binary. And so, bull and cow, it is exactly analogous to man and woman in regards to how it has been historically used. It is a term to refer to the sexual dimorphism of the human species. And if you are born male as a human, you cannot become um, female. That's just not technically possible with any given, like, maybe it's possible in some like weird sci-fi sense or whatever, where like you can rearrange matter in some like fundamental way, but that's like science fiction. That's not reality. In reality, you can't change sex for mammals and for humans.
But they demonstrate that like language is a very complicated thing. It's arguably one of the most complicated things that humans utilize is language. It's probably one of the things that gives the biggest advantage over every other species on the planet. Like the idea that we can say something and refer to things at different times or in different places, or refer to things like relationally. We're not even just saying nouns. We're like talking about relationships between two things or describing abstract thoughts. Like, yeah. Do you feel like sometimes it's not worth getting into it? Yeah, it's never worth getting into it because everybody that asks these questions are by definition fucking retarded, especially because the answer to these questions are always retarded.
This just illustrates the fact that Destiny is not well read in the literature, because there are incredibly smart, brilliant, academic, PhD philosophers who have written extensively on the gender critical position, defending the definition of woman as adult human female as being the most coherent way to do conceptual analysis on that concept. And they're not retards, they're not lazy. These are very smart people who have thought through this deeply. So Destiny's attempt to like characterize anyone who sort of asks these sorts of questions or thinks that a woman can be clearly defined as adult human female, his like attempt to characterize them as like all retards or something that is lazy on his own part, because it is just illustrating the fact that he has not done his research on this topic. He is not well read on this topic, because you would not think that only lazy retards define it that way, because there's smart philosophers like Alex Byrne, Kathleen Stock, I'm blanking, Holly Lawford Smith. There's all these professional philosophers who take a gender critical position and have thought through the conceptual details very critically, very detailed, very analytically, very logically. And they've defended rationally and intellectually and in a principled way the definition of woman as adult human female and man as adult human male. There's strong arguments for that.
Because the answer they'll give is something like adult human female. Okay, genius. What the is a female? That's
It is actually not that hard to define what is a female. And the fact that Destiny thinks that you have to be some kind of like genius to know what a female is just illustrates how much his brain has been damaged by his association with transgender activism and the progressivism that he claims to have rejected. But he's not rejected it that much, because if you actually did a little bit of investigation, a little bit of intellectual analysis, digging into the evolutionary sciences and understanding biology, you would know that when biologists are talking about males and females out in the world, so let's say you are a biologist and you're out in the field and you're studying some exotic species of bird, and then your colleague says, hey, look at that male bird over there. What are they referring to when they say a male bird or a female bird in the field, in the biological sciences, talking about the animal kingdom? They are referring to gametes, small gametes versus large gametes. Those are the two options. There's not a third type of gamete. And these are the two basic, distinct, and complementary evolutionary strategies for reproduction that we have developed as sexual animals. That is what sex is. That is what male and female is. It has to do with your gametes. This is just well established. This is not controversial. This is not complicated. This is not, this is relatively straightforward.
That's literally a definition. It's a tautological answer. You're answering the question with the same thing that is contained in the question itself. Like, what is a woman? A female. Wow. Holy shit, bro. You're fucking genius. Good.
That's not tautological, because when you say a woman is an adult human female, and female means someone capable of having or having their body organized in a developmental pathway around the production of large gametes. That is very clear. That is not circular. That is not tautological. Yeah, I don't know. Destiny just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Good job. You solved it. Like, it's just stupid. Couldn't you just say XX chromosome human mammal? You can say that, sure, but I hate this topic. I hate it. When you say, like, couldn't you just say XX chromosome human mammal? Sure, but then the question becomes, when you say woman today, are you referring to the same thing that somebody meant when they said woman in the year 1000? Because they didn't know.
Yes, you are. He's saying, yeah, they didn't know about gametes, 1,000 years ago. So how could, when someone used the word woman 1,000 years ago, how could they possibly have meant, large gamete producer if they didn't know what gametes are? Well, there's this concept in philosophy called semantic externalism. And the good example is with H2O. So 1,000 years ago, they didn't understand the chemical nature of H2O, but water is H2O. We have discovered that. And when humans 1,000 years ago were referring to water using the concept of water, they were referring to H2O. Similarly, a human 1,000 years ago referring to a bull, they didn't know about that the fact that gametes were the thing that defined males and females, but they're referring to the same thing when they use the concept bull. They're referring to the animal, the cow species that has the smaller gametes. That's what they were referring to when they used the term bull. Similarly, for the term man or woman, even though they didn't know what gametes are, that is the same referent of the term. So, yeah, I don't know. To me, like, Destiny, for all his supposed you know he's supposed to be this big brained intellectual guy, and but on this topic he just seems like a total amateur. He just hasn't thought things through very carefully, and he seems to just call everyone who disagrees with him a retard or something. And it's like, that's not a good argument. That's not engaging with the philosophical literature on this topic. So it's just lazy. It's bad philosophical argumentation. It's just incoherent, and it exposes the fact that Destiny just doesn't know what he's talking about on this issue. So, okay, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.